Hi, welcome to We Are Myth. I'm Eliza. I'm a mythologist, a writer, a storyteller, and quite possibly one of the only people in the room who can start with a Greek goddess and end up talking about the New York Knicks. Long before we had psychology and neuroscience podcasts and coaching and TikToks telling us about our attachment style, none of which I'm knocking, those are all really important. But long before we had that, we had stories. Just stories. Stories about gods, monsters, heroes, journeys, losing everything, finding ourselves. Stories about love, power, transformation, grief, longing, return. In other words, stories about us. And this is where I love mythology so much, because I don't actually think myths are primarily about things that don't exist the way some people have defined them. I think they're about us. The gods and monsters are us. The heroes and the underworlds, they live in us, which is why I don't think mythology is only ancient. In fact, I don't think it ever really disappeared. It just changed clothing. It changed costumes. Instead of Achilles, we have athletes. Instead of Olympian gods on a mountain, we have celebrities in our reality TV. Instead of gathering around fires and telling stories and painting them on cave walls, we gather around our phones and get on Reddit. Different stages, same humans. A few weeks ago, I asked a seemingly simple question online: what is myth? And the answers that came back were fantastic. One person said it was a way of understanding the past. Another described it as a culture's unique way of telling the beautiful story of existence. Someone else said it's how we make sense of the unknown while still leaving room open for wonder. Many people called it art, others ancient psychology. And I was nodding my head along to every answer that came in because they were all right, or none of them were wrong, or however you want to phrase it. Because here's the thing, and I'm sure I'm not telling you something you don't already know, but there is no fixed definition of myth. That's one of my favorite things about it. If you gathered 10 mythologists in a room and asked them for a definition of myth, you'd probably end up with at least 12 definitions and a delicious 3-hour debate about it. That's in fact what we did every weekend at grad school. It was incredible. And what was so incredible was it didn't matter the topic. Every discussion we had circled the same mystery: human existence. Because we, humans, have been asking the same question pretty much since the beginning of time. Who are we? Why are we here? Why do we fall in love with the same people over and over? And why does it hurt so much when we lose them? Why do these patterns keep repeating in my life, in my families, in our cultures? Why does every generation think they're the only generation to live through the end of days? These aren't new questions. They're ancient questions, and they're still everywhere. Whether we're talking about Taylor and Travis one week or the Met Gala the next, when surrealist artist and writer Leonora Carrington suddenly shows up in the middle of a conversation about fashion, or whether it was like 2 weeks ago when I was in New York and somehow, you'd have to be dead to not have gotten caught up in it, but I somehow became emotionally invested in the Knicks championship run, despite not being a sports person in the slightest. I found myself in the streets with thousands of people crying, singing, dancing, celebrating together, participating in this amazing, magical thing that felt so ritualistic. That's what's so fun. It's virtually impossible for me these days to separate mythology from daily life, because myth doesn't only live in the textbooks on our shelves, it's in our current stories. Our current love stories, our current politics, our current pop culture, or whatever strange thing the collective psyche has attached to that week. It's in the stories we tell. It's the myth of beauty, the myth of success, the myth of power, freedom, belonging, masculinity, femininity, and of course, love. It's literally everywhere. And once you start seeing it, it's very hard to stop. It's so fun, actually. One of my favorite things about myths is the idea that we don't only read them, they read us. They reveal what fascinates us, what frightens us, what we long for, what we are avoiding, what we fear, what we want to move towards, what we're becoming. They show us the stories we're already living inside of, and that's really what this channel is about. We're going to explore ancient myths, we're going to explore modern myths, We're going to look at culture, history, art, literature, relationships, music, current events, and whatever catches our collective attention. We're going to ask, why do certain stories refuse to die? Why do certain symbols keep recurring? Why do the same patterns seem to emerge across centuries, across cultures? And most importantly to me anyway, what do those stories have to tell us about ourselves? Because if I had to offer my own definition of myth, and it'll change tomorrow, I'm sure, but today, my definition of myth would be this. Myth is one of the oldest ways of understanding what it feels like to be alive. And my suspicion is that mythology is far more alive than most of us realize. In fact, I think it's alive in all of us. So welcome. I can't wait to explore together, because together we are myth.